Shalom everyone, Chodesh Tov. We are learning today about the month of Nisan, the sign of Aries, and it is a very, very important time. Month of Nisan, 5793, 2023. It looks like people start to realize we are on a very scary crossroads. All over the world, history is not what we thought it's going to be some 20 years ago, even 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 10 years ago. The world, it looks like, is taking a course that no one can really understand, but everybody understands that most people are scared because things are not really becoming calmer, easier, nicer, more peaceful, more understandable, more predictable, like people thought it's going to be some 20 years ago. Maybe 10 years ago, less people thought so. Now it's even more obvious that we are on a crossroad. What does it mean? The month of Nisan is always the beginning of the astrological year. And astrological year means that it's a cycle. It's a cycle of forces, it's a cycle of growth. If we see ourselves as human beings, spiritual human beings see reality as a spiral. You have cycles, and every cycle you try to use the wave to soar higher and higher and higher, because that's what the wave is about. That's why the Hebrew year, the Hebrew word for year, Shana, which is the most visible cycle, Shana means in Hebrew to repeat itself. It means the amount of days of a lunar year. Lunar year is 355. Shana is also in Hebrew a number, 355. So Shana is about a cycle, about a repetition, and also learning. It's a learning through the repetition. And that's usually how you learn, by experiencing cycles, understanding them, facing them, and taking the opportunity to rise. Now, we have in this year, we are in the middle of few cycles. I won't go into all of them, but there is the cycle of 248 years of Pluto, that every 248 years it goes again into, now it is around this time of the year, just this month. Pluto is moving into Aquarius, and the last time he did it, it was 1776. We, the people, the world is transforming, the world is changing. According to researchers in the science of history and futurology, there are also within that cycle, there are other cycles of 80 years since two Pluto cycles 500 years ago. There's another cycle in Western history of 80 years every cycle. And we are now at the end of this 80-year cycle. So we are right, and also Kabbalistically, we are in the decade of, which is 780, 5780. All along this decade, and we're just in the beginning of this decade. This is a decade of a great, huge transformation. That it's a decade of what is called Mazala. 780 is 10 times Mazala. Mazala means the influence of the higher crown, Keter, Corona. So the decade started with the Corona. And one thing that happened in the Corona time, and I'll explain it, we can see it from the story of Passover. The Zohar in the Parashat Beshalach is telling us something that I repeated very many times lately, because we have to understand we are going through a very similar thing. It says that when the Israelites, the Zohar says, left Egypt, they were not happy. They were, and what the Zohar is describing is what we know today in modern psychology, they were in a post-traumatic syndrome. Very strong one. Why? They were going through a huge persecution, torture, whatever you name it, in the slavery of the Egyptians. The Egyptians wanted to finish the Israelites. They killed the children, they killed others, they tortured everybody, and that took centuries. And now, as they leave Egypt, after the Exodus, the Zohar is saying when somebody is in such a torture, he has one thought in his mind: to survive the next hour, the next day. He can't think more than that. The moment the threat is over, he starts to realize what he was going through. And then he realized how terrible was his situation and how much he suffered. So he starts to figure it out, and it dawns on him that he was really going through a tough time. Now, that's the post-traumatic aspect. And the result is that after a few days of recuperation, only then the Israelites were ready to think about freedom. Before that, you just want the pain to stop. You don't really know what does freedom mean. Okay? You dream about it, but somebody who's so deep in the torture, in the slavery, cannot really understand what freedom means. So, and you know, one of the major tools of subjugation in cults is to get you into sleep deprivation. So you're working so hard and you are sleep deprived, and that means that you can't even think about freedom or really logically realize where are you at and what are you doing if you really want it. And then came the pandemic, and if it was right or not, it doesn't matter. What matters is it was right. Why it was right? Who put the idea in the minds of the leaders of the world to get the whole of humanity into a lockdown? That was God Almighty. Why? Because first time in many, many years, people sat at home and they were coming out of the trauma of work, running after whatever. Everything was in a craze. Everything was a craze. Even tourism was a craze. Even having fun. Wherever you went, you felt the energy, and everything was like in a tantrum. Working, spending time with the family, everything had to be on steroids. And suddenly you're stuck at home, not for a day, not for a week, for months, and some countries for years. And you have the time to come out of the trauma and to realize you've been in the trauma and to realize that you don't like this life. You don't like to run like crazy after fun, after money, after spending, after making money. You don't like it. And you realize another thing. You realize that the people that you entrusted, your power, your money, the leadership, you gave the power to them. That's what a state is about. A state is about, a country is about, that the people give up some of their freedoms, like paying taxes, some of the freedoms, like doing whatever they want, to the government to take it away, that there is a law, an order, because you trust them that they will take that power you gave them That's in all schools of statehood, statesmanship, and so on. You learn in politics. So those people in power, what we call government, you trust them that they will take care the best they can of what you don't want to take care of, like uh, planning, future planning, safety, security, so many things. That's what the government's supposed to do. And suddenly comes the corona, and people realize that those people were not ready for that. They have no idea what they're doing, and they're not really committed to the person, to the individual. So why are we giving them so much power if they abuse that power and trust that we gave them? So we have a whole huge meetings of convergence of so many cycles that all of them are about one thing. People need to step up, move up to the next level of sense of freedom. Now, the question is, how do we do that without spirituality? And the answer is, it's impossible. You have no tools if you do not really take control over your spiritual growth. And that is the prophecy in the Zohar of Parashat Shmot, where Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, it says about him, he raises his hands to the heavens, he cries and says, woe to those who would live in such an era. We're living in an era in which people lost faith, and it's justified in a way, because what governments are doing today, religions did in the past, abuse of power. But the problem is, when you give your back to religion, you give your back also to God. And when you turn away from God, you have a problem. Because as someone who's running the show, and if you just turn your back to him, you're alone. And when you're alone, you have no way to deal with the hardship of life, and then you become chaotic. And you can see that in our society all over the world, the moment people start to move away from God, they're trying to find a replacement. So what people do, they start to adopt the paganism of ancient times. You see so many people that they adore all kinds of pagan traditions that survived from the past. Either shamanism, all kinds of stuff like this. And remember, those ancient teachings did not have the power of monotheism, because the power of monotheism is hope. The power of monotheism is morality. The power of monotheism is that there are set very strong rules that you cannot go around them, because that's how the universe is aligned, programmed, and part of these rules is, and that's very important, these are the biblical universal laws of honesty, dignity, integrity, and more than that, overcoming our selfishness or selfish drives and needs. And the moment we go back to before monotheism, paganism, if you look at the ancient pagan pantheon and all the ancient mythologies, we realize that the ancient gods of the ancient paganist religions, they represented all the darkest, selfish aspects of human nature. And the moment you worship them and you do not take responsibility anymore to harness them, subjugate them, and control them, if you do not do that, they ride over you, control you, subjugate you, and the result is terrible. Is a society that there is no absolute truth. There's no set rules. There's no dignity. You don't know what to expect from people because everybody adorns or uh, or worships his own narrative, and you don't know what to expect from people. So you can't trust people anymore. And more than that, if you see movies about ancient times, the tattoos, people, the savages, the barbarians, they were covered with tattoos, and you see people going around. Although the Bible says, do not tattoo your skin, do not put tattoo on your skin, uh, people going like crazy, and it like you're really walking on the street, especially in the summer, you think paganism is back. All the ancient barbarism, the whole thing about you have no idea what people believe in because there's no set rules. The only rule is whatever I feel like, that's what I will do. And who cares about society? Who cares about anything? And we are in a very, very um, confusing era, which means whatever we knew is falling apart, and something new is going to come out of the destructions of the old world. And how would it look? We know it's going to be much better, as we know, because the word corona, keter, is the crown, is the great force of the Creator to give. So the question is, and that's what we need the study of the month of Nisan or ARIES about. It's what is the secret of really taking control over our lives while the rest of the world is going into chaos. You can't trust the government. You can't trust the banking system anymore. Whatever we remember in our, in older days, or our parents remember, things were really trustworthy. It's not anymore. And we will realize that a lot of things that we thought we can trust them, we could not, but we were not aware of it. And now it's a grand awakening to who we are, what we are. A new treaty must be signed between humanity, its leaders, religious leaders, political leaders, whatever leaders. The whole world is really realigning, and we will see an amazing world coming out of it. It will take a while. It's not going to happen tomorrow. But in this month's study, we will try to get the essence of how do you create an island of peace around you. So whatever is happening around, not just it's not going to hurt you, you're going to gain from it. And when a big wave is coming, you will be riding over it instead of letting it drown you underneath it. So, how is that connected to the month of Aries? Let us see. We see over here that the month of Aries, the sign of Aries, is ruled by planet Mars. And in the Hebrew tradition, when we go back 4,000 years ago to the book of formation, Sefer Yetzirah, we see that the month of Aries was created by the frequency that is represented in the Hebrew letter Hey, while planet Mars was created by the frequency that is represented by the Hebrew letter Dalet. Also, the Tetragrammaton, which is one of the major code, the most central DNA code of creation and reality, has 12 permutations that each one of them is connected to the code of one of the 12 months of the year, or 12 signs of the zodiac. The one that is for Aries is the original one, the first one, Youdkevitch, That's the first permutation, which is the straight original permutation. And that means that this month is the most powerful in a way than all the others. Okay, so, and also we see over here in this picture, the third line of the Ana Bekoch prayer, Na Gibor, Dorshei Yechudecha Kevavat Shomrem. This is the one that we use during the month of Aries to control the powers, the forces that appear in this month and to harness them for ourselves. But first of all, this month is extremely important because it is spoken about in the Torah, in the book of Exodus, chapter 12, verse 1. This is where this month is starting to start. And if you look at the text, it says, this החודש הזה לכם ראש חודשים, ראשון הוא לכם לחודשי השנה. This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It should be the first month of the year to you. Most translations say that this way or another. But the problem is that English was not created for that purpose. And the moment you translate it into English, it's like turning a beautiful picture of, of the view of a beautiful place, colors, 3D, sound, smell, and you turn it to black and white 2D picture. You lose most of it. That's the difference between the Hebrew and the English. Let's see what the Hebrew says. The Hebrew says, this month is for you, is yours. Okay? It is yours. The head of the months. It is yours and it is the head of the months. It is the first one for the months of the year. Okay? And now the sages are asking, why do you use the word lachem twice? The word lachem, it is yours, appears twice. Okay? Once when it says, and of course you can't really translate it. Once you hear the word, you see the word lachem over here. Just a second. And here you have another time, lachem, twice, the word lachem. And the word lachem means for you and yours. Why do you need to add it two places in the same verse? And if you take these two words lachem out of the verse, it will sound like the English verse. But the Hebrew, the word lachem is very dominant over here. Very important. That's one of them. The other one is Rosh. It doesn't say it's a beginning of the month. It says the head of the month. And we know that the word head is a code for control. When you say the head of state, the head of the household, the head of the family, the head of the army, every time you have the word head, especially in Hebrew, it means this is where the control is happening. That's where you can take control and master the outcomes. Because it says also, Sof ma'aseh b'machshava techila. The action is first and for all being decided in the thought. So first you think, that's the head, and nobody, only babies or people are really not well, nobody does something without thinking about it first. Where do you think about it? Your head. So the head means the control. The head means where everything comes out of. The power, the planning, the information, the success or the failure. It's all coming from the head. Why? the month of Aries is the head. The symbol is the head. But whoever knows like simple Western astrology, okay, the part of the body for the month of Aries is the head. It's very, very rare to find an Aries, a typical Aries, without a scar somewhere on the head. Why? Because they go head on. They go with a head on the wall to break it, like a ram. You know, a ram, that's a sign. Aries means a ram. And the machine in the ancient times to gore the walls of a city was called a ram. Okay, so you ram the walls of the city. So why? Because Aries, they go head on and into the walls. They don't go around it, they go straight into it. So, and they always jump to try to lead. They need to lead the gang, to lead the people, or to be the ones who are the walking in front of the camp and doing what nobody dares to do. They will do it first. So although for most people doing something nobody ever did scares most people, Aries, they not just it doesn't scare them, it gets them excited. Oh, I can do something nobody else did before. Okay, pioneers. That's what Aries are about. It's so being the head of the camp, doing something nobody did before, reinventing yourself all the time. That's all connected to the head. Okay, but what is the higher meaning to it? So we learn Kabbalistically, we have few concepts to learn over here. And that will help us to understand basically how can we navigate in the coming scary years that things are not going to be the same, not anymore. Things are going to change. We are going to be more free, more in control of our destiny. And we know a lot of people don't like it. People prefer that somebody else will take the lead, Rosh, and we will follow. And now the time is that you have to realize that freedom is not a choice. Freedom is our destiny. And going back to the idea of the number 780, we have 5780. Okay, we are the sixth millennium of this cycle of human history, the sixth millennium, and we are on the decade 780. And we said 780, it's a symbol of the highest level, the corona, the Keter. And what does it mean? Keter means the original source and thought of creation, which is, it's all for the purpose of sharing, caring with humanity, with the creation. We are not here to suffer. We're not here to be enslaved to anyone, anything. We are here to be free. So humanity in this decade, especially, is going to learn a lesson about freedom that we never experienced. We're going to experience dimensions of freedom that we never realized exist. And we don't like it so much because most people prefer to stick to the old habits. Okay? Too late. It's moving forward, and either you join it or you'll be crushed by it. And after you've been crushed by it, you'll get up and you'll have to follow the whole thing, but you'll be later. And later means more pain and more delay. So let's see what's is in it for us. So the sages tell us that the word lachem, yours, is the same letters as melech, king. And what is king? King is about control. King is about mastering your own destiny. When it says this new moon let's go back. We are chapter 12 in Exodus. This is when God is giving the schedule to Moses and Aaron. And he says to them, we're right now in front of the 10th final plague. That is the plague that finished one of the strongest tyrannies ever, ancient Egypt. The most cruel, the highest level of slavery, subjugation, and torture and injustice, which, of course, today people are very excited about all the findings in Egypt, but that all came from a privileged minority that subjugated a huge nation and used the resources that this nation created for themselves. Just think about it. How much of the GDP of Egypt did Pharaoh use to build his pyramids? And to put inside all the treasures. No one can enjoy the treasures he accumulated. No, he had to take it with him. And he had to create a huge safe, the pyramid. Everybody will see it here today. So it's very exciting, but remember, it came out of a terrible, horrible selfishness. Okay? So coming out and of such a tyranny and redefining the idea of freedom in a way that inspired people for thousands of years later. Let my people go. The quest to freedom is starting. Our quest for freedom is starting on that time. And it starts with, which are the words, this month, the month of Aries, for you. It's yours to rule, to control. It's going to be the new month for you. And then the schedule continues. On the 10th day, each one of you, each household is going to take a young ram to his household. And on the 14th, just on sundown of the full moon of Aries, you will slaughter the ram, and then you roast it on open fire. Do not cook it in water. Roast it on open fire. Why? We are looking at one of the greatest, biggest voodoo ceremonies in history. A whole nation is taking the ram, the symbol of one of the most important deities of Egypt, on the full moon of Aries, taking that. And we know Aries is a fire sign, and fire, you fight with fire. You take the ram, you slaughter it, and you roast it on open fire. And to show it's a ram, they were not supposed to cut it. They had to roast it, barbecue it on open fire, full, that everybody can see this is a lamb. And the consciousness was, we are right now overcoming our own Aries, because without it, we cannot be the kings, the rulers of our own destiny. So just think about it. The Jewish tradition says that if you want to look again on the word melech, king, it's made of 3 letters. The mem stems for moach, brain. The lamed, the second letter, stems for lev, heart. And the kaf, the third letter, stems for kaved, the liver. When a person is in any and every case puts the mind first, which kind of a mind? Today we know we're talking about the frontal lobe. In ancient Jewish teachings, in the Zohar, we're talking about that part in the frontal lobe that has the ability to create vision, spirituality, spiritual growth. When you can focus on that part, which means your vision and your godliness, and who is the poor person, the holy person you're supposed to become, then you have the ability to control the heart and the liver. The heart means the passions, desires, inclinations, and the liver symbolizes anger, dirt, negativity, all kind of filth, mental filth that we accumulate. And as long as we can really put the frontal lobe first, which means the vision, the holy goal of what we want to become, if this is my goal, I can control the heart and the liver. And if it in that order, you are melech, you are the king. You have the real control over your life. If you do that, and you are the king, you connect to the king of the universe. You connect to the godly network. And therefore, you will find yourself making the right decisions, having the proper thoughts and the right emotions that will move you forward into a better future, better choices, and a higher elevated state of consciousness. Okay, this is highly important. However, if you allow your heart to lead, so you're not melech anymore. Now, if the lamed of the heart is coming first, then you become a lemech. A lemech is somebody that is unlucky, has no control, whimsical, so you can't trust him, he's not stable. Or if you let the liver, the angers, and the dark emotions that were accumulated that did not clean, you let them control you, you become then, you read it backwards, it's a klum, a nothing. You become a nothing. If somebody just is being run by hatred, anger, upset, he's a nothing, because nobody can trust him, and he can never achieve anything, because your anger, your hatred, envy will always sabotage whatever you're going to create. So you have to understand that this is a very important code word, melech. Now, what does that mean? Now, the Hebrew letter He that plays a very important role. In this case, if you notice, the letter He is the letter that created the month of ARIES, according to the book of formation of Abraham the patriarch. And we will see how the letter He plays a major role in the Exodus and also in our private individual Exodus every year. Okay? So the letter He that you see in front of you is also representing the Sephirah of Malchut. Malchut, kingdom, comes from the word Melech, king. King, Melech, kingdom, Malchut, which means Malchut, but Malchut is the last 10th letter of the 10 Sephirot. This is number 10. How come this is Malchut? The Keter, the crown, should be Malchut. But we know in Malchut means control. Who is in control? Who is in control in this world? We are. Which means even when we are chaotic, let's say we listen first, we let the energy center of our body to be the liver. Angers, envy, filth, all the negativities that we accumulate, we allow that to control us. So, the moment we allow that to control us, we control the rest of it, and that's how our life would look like. So we do have Malchut, control over our life, as we learned many times. Pessimistic people who see terrible stuff everywhere, people that everything think, whatever can go wrong, it will go wrong even more. They're totally subjugated to Murphy's laws. This research is saying the moment that this is your state of mind, that's how your life is going to look like. But if you are managing to turn around the order of the forces and the chakras that are playing in yourself, and you let the brain and the frontal lobe of the brain, which means that that part that can connect and focus on holiness, holiness as a goal, as a vision, okay, then everything looks holy, positive, and you will create a life that will be full of holiness, positivity, health, and the world will treat you the way you treat it. So, controlling Malchut, our desires, our state of mind, our state of being, that is all focused on the letter Hey. And the letter Hey is the letter of the month of Aries. The month of Aries is not just control for this month, but for the whole year long. We'll see that theme continuing when we go back again to chapter 12 in Exodus. What does it say? It says that when you slaughter the lamb, you take its blood and you put it on the doorposts and the lintel. And the Zohar is teaching us, how do you put it? You put one line on top of the door, one on the post, the right post, full on the right post, and partial on the left post. And what do you get? The letter Hey. Again, you create protection with marking the letter Hey on the doors of all the Israelite nation in Egypt. And that made the angel of death skip over the households of the Israelites and the households of the Egyptians. When it was not marked, over there the angel of death slaughtered all the firstborns. The letter Hey appears again as a major power, and here as a protection, which means there is, and by the way, if you want to understand this, the letter Hey, if we know Hebrew, in Hebrew the letters are also numbers, and Hey is 5. So 5 became the symbol of protection. Okay? 5 is also, how do you mark 5? A hand. That's how the Hamsa came into being. It's all coming from the Exodus. The origin of the protection, and that's why if you go to ancient Jewish symbols of Hamsa, there was the letter Hey inside the symbol. However, you know how symbols become redundant. So what's left is the hand, and people forgot that the real protection is not the hand, but the letter Hey. But just marking the letter Hey is a protection. It's not enough. You need to create it in your mind. How do you do that? So the Zohar is saying, why the 3 posts of the 2 posts in the lintel? So one is right column, Abraham, giving. The other one is the left column, Isaac, receiving. And the upper one is Jacob, the central column, which means when a person knows how to balance those 3 forces, then you can really create a protection, a shield. Why is it so important? Because when we live in a world that everyone wants it for himself and immediately and without paying for it, no matter what the cost will be later, you have no control whatsoever, because you have no 3-column system. You have a system of selfishness, which means I want it now, and I don't care about the ramifications, consequences. I want it now because I want it. And the fact that I want it and I desire it and I crave for it, that entitles me to take it. That means stay using only left column. Left column, that's idol worshiping, which means just the liver or the heart without any control, without any big picture. Which means, what is the result of something like this? I call it the high and buy. You use only the left column, you receive fulfillment. How long? You get drunk. How long do you feel good? Half an hour? 10 minutes? 2 hours? The longest, then it becomes very uncomfortable. Same thing with drugs. Same thing with all the easy gratification, immediate gratifications. It's using the left column. I want it, I get it, who cares about the rest? This is paganism. Because you realize that you live in a life of hopelessness, which means what you can get the best, like an immediate gratification of a very short time, and the rest is just dark, grief, depression, and helplessness. Okay? That's slavery. This is slavery. So the biggest plague right now around the world is this thing. And therefore people are becoming subjected to the biggest plague of antidepressants, painkillers. It's all about one thing. You can't have a culture based on the left column and be out of pain. That's an endless pain. And the more drugs you're going to take, it's not going to finish it. It's just going to cover up for it for a little bit. And then the pain is getting bigger and bigger. That's called paganism. Worshipping selfishness, worshipping physical beauty, worshipping physical gains and physical attractions. This is the face of the pantheon of paganistic religions. That's why it's so hopeless, because it's a dead-end road. The road of control, that's being the king. That's adopting the consciousness of the letter Hey. So how do you see that letter Hey today? Okay, we're not going to slaughter a lamb and put it on the door. Okay, so what are we going to do now? So the Hey is the major meditation for this month, because it's the letter of ARIES, as creating Malchut, which means controlling our desires, drive, controlling, and turn it into a desire to receive for the sake of sharing. Let us see how it works. When we make the Seder plate on the full moon of Passover, we're using the matzah. What is the matzah? The unleavened bread. The matzah, or the unleavened bread, is the main symbol of the Exodus. And that's why one of the major names of Passover is the holiday of the matzot, Chag HaMatzot, the holiday of the unleavened bread. And so what is the unleavened bread? If the bread is a symbol of ego and selfishness, how do we know? We take flour, we add water, it sucks it in. It soaks and it soaks and it soaks. And after it finishes soaking, it's still dry. You have the dough and you leave it and it starts to rise. Like the ego. Look at me. I'm rising. That's called, the word for ego in Hebrew, the bad ego, is pride, ga'ava. And it's coming from the word geut, tide. Tide means when a person, we can say it in a simple English, he is full of himself. There's such a tide of self-appreciation or self-adornment. Me, and just me. So it fills you up. There's no place for God, only for yourself. So you're empty because yourself, you're not a source of light. You're a recipient. but you're full of yourself, there's no place for the light of God to come in. Okay, so what do? You take the bread, which is a symbol of pride, of being full of yourself, and the major thing about the bread that it rises. So only the 5 grains that rise are material for matzah. You take it because how do you make an inoculation, a vaccination to a disease? You need to take the original disease as a base for the inoculation, for the vaccination. And what do? You weaken it. So if the whole thing about the bread is rising, if you see, if whoever been to a matzah factory, everything is under the clock, it has to be really fast. The moment they pour the water into the or over the flour and mix it, the first thing is they beat it like crazy, like you're killing it. Why? Not allowing it to rise. So you don't just knead it, you beat it up. And then the moment there's a dough, you rush it into the oven. Within 18 minutes, from the moment it became wet till it's a finished baked, which means it doesn't have time to rise. So the unleavened bread is basically, says the Zohar, it's a vaccination against pride, the negative pride, that you're full of yourself, so there's no space. You didn't make any space for the light of God inside you. Now, the matzah, you have to look at the matzah on the night of the Seder as the letter Hey. So the whole thing about the matzot on the Seder night is to get vaccinated for the whole year against pride, bad ego, and any negativity. So we can have a victory over that evil inclination that basically plagues us all. We're humans. Now, there are 3 matzot on the Seder plate. And Rabbi Zechariah is telling us the first one, the top one, okay, when you put it, you visualize the letter Hey that is made of 2 letters, Daled and Yud. There are 3 ways to write the letter Hey. So here you can see the letter Daled. Okay, that's how the letter Daled. And by the way, the letter Daled is the letter that created Mars. Okay? And Dalet means poverty. Why? Because without the Yud inside, the Dalet is empty. It's hungry. It's poor. Who goes to war? Rich, fulfilled, satiated people? No, they don't go to war. They're spending time on having life, good life and pleasure. Only the hungry ones go to war. That's a letter Dalet. That's planet Mars. That's the planet of wars. Now, when the Yud comes into the Dalet, and the Yud symbolizes the 10 Sfirot, now it's like the vessel that was empty and hungry, now it is full. So when it is full with spiritual light, that's one of the ways to look at the letter Hey. Okay, so this is one way to write the letter Hey, okay, Dalet and Yud. So that's what you visualize when you put the top matzah on the Seder plate, according to the Arizal, Rabbi Zechariah. When you put the second matzah, the middle matzah, then you visualize on the letters Dalet and Vav. You have here again Dalet, and inside you have the letter Vav. Vav is 6. 6 plus 4 gives you 10. And when we do Yachatz, in the beginning of the Haggadah, we have the stages, we break the middle matzah. So you break it into 2 parts, the Dalet and the Vav, says the Arizal. The big Dalet is 4, Vav is 6. Okay, Dalet is 4, Vav is 6. So the bigger part, when you break the matzah, is the Vav, and that one is being hidden till the end of the Seder. It's a big story, but still, it's a second way to write the letter Hey, and another way to control the Hey. And the third bottom matzah is made of 3 times Vav. Vav is 6, 3 times Vav is 6, 6, 6, 18, Chai. That is the flow of life. The flow of life. Okay, the spine, the energy of connecting to the heavenly light. Okay, this is what the Vav, the 3 Vavs over here, that's why it's a central column. Okay, so what do? The whole thing about taking the bread and making matzah, unleavened bread, out of it is controlling the hay, controlling the desires, controlling the me thinking, controlling the self-identity. What does it mean controlling? You want to be the king, you have to subjugate your desires to one thing: spirituality, godliness, holiness, with a commitment to be there for others unconditionally, as much as you can, with at the same time taking care of the left column, which is I need to exist, so I need to support myself, but I'm not here just to receive. The receiving is not deadly only when you use big part of it for others. You want to be happy, make other people happy. As a main rule, the real happiness is coming when you're not subjugated to the whims, desires of the heart and the liver. When you have overwhelming commitment to live a life that you control the hay. What does it mean to control the hay? Overcoming, there's no legitimacy for ego, for pride, for hatred, for anger, for carrying negativity. I have to make a living. But that's not what life is about. As I said, I'm making a living, but I need a vision. How making a living is also going to make other people, give them service, give others value. Okay? And that means about the same thing about telling the truth, about, what it says on the 2 tablets, on Mount Sinai Revelation. Whatever I feel like is right does not mean it's right. When I want to do something, I have to stop it and see how does that bring me into becoming a more enlightened person. And the fact that I'm going to have my little desires fulfilled, who cares about the consequences? That's not controlling the hay, that's not being Melech, the king, that's being nothing. So after we spend the whole night of the Seder, the full moon of Aries, the peak power of Aries, contemplating, meditating, playing with the letter hay, even eating the bitter herbs. What does it mean eating the bitter herbs? When you overcome the bitterness because you know the sweetness is going to arrive. That's why we experience bitterness, discomfort, and negativity. Staying optimistic, believing, knowing, having faith that as long as my desires are focused on one great goal and desire, to be enlightened, to give value, to leave something behind that I shared with people. I didn't come to this world to be a taker. When I have that commitment, when I cleansed the negativity, and I'm committing not to have selfishness or all kinds of bodily desires controlling me. Not that I have to torture the body, no, not at all. But the spirituality of the brain must overcome the emotionality of the heart and the discomfort and negativity of the liver. When I concentrate on that on the night of the Seder, at the end, the last stage of the Seder is Nirtza, forgiveness. And then comes the morning after. And what do we do on the morning after? One of the most important things in the morning after, because we did really everything at night. The peak is at night in Passover. But the peak in the morning after is Birkat Hatal. We make the blessing of Tal. What is Tal? Dew. And the dew is, Tal is a number 39. 39 is 3 times love. 3 times love. Ahava is 13. 13 is 1. 13 is love. 13 is unity. Unity of the above and the below, the soul and the body. That's basically the harmony. 3 times right, left, and center gives you Tal, do, and the Tal is the blessing of everything for the coming 6 months. So that's the blessing, the special prayer we do in the morning. Now, the word Taleh is ARIES in Hebrew. When you achieve control on the hay, we know ARIES, they love wars. And the word Taleh, the letter Tet is a number 9. Lamed is 30. And Hay is 5. What do you get? 9 plus 30 plus 5, 44. 44 is dam, blood. Taleh is blood. We know this is the month of warriors, of people who like to hunt to see blood. This is the month that controls everything of conflict and fight for the whole year. The planet of Mars is the planet of wars. Taleh means blood. But the moment you isolate, you control the hay, now you're the king. It's under your control. What's left from Taleh? Tal. Dew. Dew means the heavenly dew that symbolize the blessing, the sustenance, all what is good, the flow of good fortune for till the end of the high holidays, 6 months from now. So when we control our desires to receive, we accept the control over our whimsical nature, our evil inclination, to be here to serve a higher cause, a higher vision of serving humanity, serving other people, overcoming the bodily needs and desires, which is paganism. When we achieve that control, we fight it in the first 2 weeks of ARIES, we can reach stability, control, and protection, and a flow of bliss for the next 6 months. That's why the month of ARIES is so powerful and so important. Okay. After realizing that, and we understand, this is if we do that in the first 2 weeks of ARIES, and especially in the holiday of Passover for 7 days, we will have better control over Malchut. We'll have more control over our bodily desires, a lower negative desires. That means more stability, more enlightenment, more protection for the whole year. So now let's come to other aspects of understanding ARIES as a sign among the other signs. You see over here that ARIES over here is Rosh LaChodeshim, the head of the months, the control, which means what we do here in the month of Aries will control the whole battle. The real battle is between our selfish desires that pull us down and sabotage our life, and our soul desires that lift us up and bring us to connect to the godly network of bliss, happiness, longevity, health, everything that is really important. Okay? So what the sages are saying, the battle that you make during the first 2 weeks of Aries, cleaning, preparing yourself towards Passover, and then Passover itself for the Seder, the 7 days of Passover, that will determine how the war would look like for the whole coming year. For the whole coming year. So this is Rosh LaChodeshim. It's the head of the months. While Rosh Hashanah is Rosh Hashanah, the head of the year. The head of the year from another aspect. It's the aspect of judgment, the aspect of spirituality, of spiritual consciousness, but here it's about the real fight is being decided. And the gift of Passover is there's a great, as we say, that every person has to see themselves coming out of Egypt every year again in Passover. Why? Because Egypt is our slavery, our ancient paganism. That's our negativity. We're not talking about a nation or a geographical area. We're talking about the subjugation, the lack of freedom that we all experience when we think that life is about drinking or getting high with powders or any kind of other stuff that we do today in a modern society to get high, to get excited, and it's all high and by. And the more you do it, the less you're happy, the less happy you are, without realizing that the key for happiness is the letter Hey. The letter Hey, through the whole year, but especially during this month. Okay, so now we're coming now to the Kabbalistic way to analyze what Aries is about. So Aries is in the spring, and the spring means the first season, the letter Yud, Chokhmah, and it is fire, it's energy, it is creativity, and therefore these are the signs of Aries. They are very creative. It's fire. Fire is very creative. Okay, it is fire because the whole three signs, Aries, Taurus, and Gemini, they are fire at the core because they belong to the spring. So all of them are very selfish by nature, very energetic, very powerful. If they're not spiritual, disastrous. This is not because there's so much energy. If it's not harnessed, how do you harness? When you take the commitment to use everything for the sake of a greater goal, a greater vision. Okay? Now, if you see also, like each sign has also what is known in modern astrology, that Aries is a fire sign, Taurus is an air sign, Gemini is an air sign. Yeah, it's another layer. Aries is double fire. What does it mean? Huge energy. It's I always say, you have friends who are Aries, you need help in the middle of the night, you're stuck, look for your Aries friend. They're probably not asleep. And if they are asleep and you call them for help, they jump out of the bed and come to help you. That's Aries. They're energized, and also, so why is this need to help and to be there with so much chivalry to come and help anyone in need? That's because Aries is right column of the spring, and the right column is chesed, water. That means the desire to give, to be there for others. What's the problem? Because there's double fire, and it means that if you don't show appreciation for the giving, they can really, really get hurt. Okay, so we know that Aries, they want to be the pioneers. They have huge amount of energy, unending energy, like little kids. They run like crazy, and then, like kids, they can drop and fall asleep for even a day or two, and then get up and continue like nothing happened, with a lot of energy. Of course, when you play with fire, you can get burned. And that's why later on, if they're not becoming spiritual and think life is like this childly thing, it's all around me, it doesn't end nice, uh, because the fire consumes you if it's not a spiritual fire, the fire of excitement about doing good for others. So we know the tribe of Nisan for the month of Nisan is Reuven, and that's why Reuven, or in English Reuben, and that's why the stone is ruby, a red stone. Okay, the stone, ruby, Reuven, and who's the firstborn of Jacob. And we spoke already about the hay and the Youdkevitch, which is the only month that has the straight sequence, which means it is the head of the month. Also, planet Mars. Planet Mars is Dalet, and as we said, Dalet means hunger. That's why it's a red planet. Red is left column, which means going to war because you're hungry. So it's hunger, and hungry people can achieve a lot. Strong drives, motivations, creativity, daring, and wars and blood. There's so much energy over there. If it's not harnessed by spiritual learning and commitment, that could be devastating. Murder, robbery, fighting for nothing. We know the two aspects, and that's why the Talmud says you're born under the influence of planet Mars. Either you're a killer, hunter, murderer, or you can be a surgeon, or a butcher, or a circumcising expert. It's like not everybody can cut people without fainting. Okay, you need that planet Mars over there, saving other people's life. Okay, so I think we covered a lot of issues. This is a very powerful month, especially now for humanity, that everything is becoming so intense. So wishing all of us a really powerful spiritual month of Aries, taking responsibility, taking the oath that we here to use the hay, ours, for us to be the kings, only when we subjugate our desires to a higher cause for a spiritual goal, for a spiritual vision. And when we allow all of these whims and desires to control us, we'll be miserable slaves. And we go into the hysterical society that we live in. People simply suffering for nothing because, hysteria, fear, hatred are the major means of subjugation of people. You're so helpless when you let your liver to take over, when you let your whimsical heart to take over, when you let the body desires and needs to take over. That's going back to paganism. It's time to turn back to true, holy monotheism. Thank you, and have a great, happy Aries and a great year.